welcome everyone and good afternoon. Thanks all for coming. It's great to see so many of you here today for this CIPS Excellence in Procurement launch event. A huge thank you firstly to the Sainsbury's team for giving us access to this fantastic space today. So I'm James Moore, part of the CIPS content and editorial team at Think. Think, we're a content agency. We work really closely with CIPS on all things content, so everything from newsletters to events to webinars, podcasts and awards like today. And I'm delighted to be running through the first part of the agenda this afternoon. So what's today all about and what can you hope to gain from it? First off, and we think this goes right to the purpose of CIPS itself, excellence in procurement and supply really matters. This profession is at the heart of local economies and global commerce, and it helps companies and public sector bodies deliver and achieve wider strategic objectives, not just cost-cutting, but sustainability targets or building resiliency into operations. These are big and really important things. Organisations that excel at procurement and supply generally excel in what they do overall. And as you know, the CIPS Excellence in Procurement and Supply Awards have, for many years, been recognising a global excellence in this profession. They are totally independent. They are open to everyone, no matter the size of your business, the scope of your industry, or the region that you're in. Ultimately, what matters is that shortlisted candidates and winners really can claim to be showcasing best practice in what you do. But, as we all know, it's not easy to pull together a compelling award-winning entry that showcases your project or your initiative or your story in a way that does them justice. How do you communicate a complex team project that took hours and hours of meetings to pull together, or convey to independent judges what makes an individual so special? Those are some of the things we want to help you achieve at today's event. And while we're doing it, we'll hear some inspiring stories of genuine procurement excellence from last year's award winners. It's our hope that some of the people in this room will be being celebrated at this year's CIPS Excellence Awards like they were last year, on the 4th of September this year at Grosvenor House, London. Before we get going, I'd just like to thank our award sponsors for this year, Atomis, ERA Group, and in particular our new headline sponsor, Liberty Bloom. The Liberty Bloom team are actually here today and have generously supplied the cupcakes, which I'm looking forward to. Yeah, there you go, which I'm looking forward to as well in the break. I think the number one thing we'd encourage today is to use the time to ask the questions that matter to you. You know, ask our presenters, ask our judges, ask our CIPS experts, whatever you think will help you shine a spotlight on your entry, whether it be this year or in the future. So, before we get going, I just need to run through a few housekeeping notes as ever. Evacuation procedure, there are no fire alarms scheduled for today, so if you do hear something, assume it is real. Please leave the building in a calm and orderly fashion and follow the instructions given over the tannoy. Please exit the building using the nearest fire exit, which I believe is just near the toilets, and meet at the assembly point on St Andrews Street. Toilets are located just outside of this room to the far right near the lifts. Mobile phones, if you can please switch them to silent, and if you're taking any notes on laptops, which that's great, but if you could mute your notifications, that would be fantastic. That Teams notification really does ring alarm bells in my head every time I hear it, so that would be really, really useful. We are recording this afternoon to create some on-demand content for those who couldn't make it, or for you to watch back on, or to share with your teams. So these will be made available to you soon after the end of today. Right, so we're going to approach the secret to writing an award-winning entry in two parts this afternoon. First, we're going to hear from some of last year's fantastic winners. They're going to give a glimpse into their stories while explaining what they focused on for their entries and what the win did for them and for their team. Following that, there will be a chance for you to ask them your questions, whether it's on the entries themselves or their approach to entering. We'll then have that short refreshment break to dive into those cupcakes, as I said earlier. And following that, we'll hear from the brilliant Emma Scott. So Emma is CIPS Global Head of Content. I'm sure many of you have spoken to her before, and she'll share some tips from CIPS. Emma has been heavily involved in the awards process for several years and has seen examples of what really works, maybe some of the things that don't work, and common pitfalls to avoid, especially from a judging perspective. We'll also hear from Jackie Scully, my colleague and an executive director at Think. Some of you may recognise Jackie as the host from last year's CIPS Futures conference, but she's also a content and storytelling specialist. and has written tons of award-winning entries herself. So Jackie's going to share some of her experiences from that process, how to develop compelling award-winning entries, such as how to tell a story with your submissions, how to use the data, and how to give it all that bit of sparkle that can really capture the attention of judges. And we'll also, on that note, hear from one of last year's judges, Ben Frick. Ben is Director of Procurement and Supply Chain at Whitbread. He's one of this year's judges as well, and he'll be able to share his honest and open thoughts and reflections as a judge of what he likes to see. Again, you'll then have the chance to ask any questions you may have to Emma, Jackie, and Ben. We'll finish off with some dates to keep in mind for entries, such as that all-important early bird deadline date, and wrap up with some networking. So before we hear from last year's winners, we wanted to just share why we feel the awards matter so much and why business awards in general matter so much, particularly the CIPS Excellence Awards, of course. For this, I will hand over to my colleague Matthew Rock, Content Director at Think, who has spent much of his career involved in the business awards world. And he's seen firsthand the benefits of being recognised and what it can do for you as a team, as a function, or as a brand. So, Matthew, I will pass over to you.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you all. I've tried to say hello to a lot of you, so nice to see you. As James said, I've been working in awards. I've worked on dozens of awards programmes over my career. Probably the highlight moment was hosting and sitting next to and struggling to do small talk with Bill Gates at the Growing Business Awards. I've worked on a fantastic project called the First Women Awards, which celebrates trailblazing women in a number of sectors. And for about 15 years, I was privileged to work alongside an incredible lady called Pinky Lilani, who runs the Asian Women of Achievement and Women of the Future Awards program. So I've had a lot of exposure in the past, and now I'm really excited to be working on the superb CIPS Excellence in Procurement Awards. I thought I would just try and answer in a few moments that basic question that I think probably a lot of people have is, well, why should I bother, fundamentally? We know that awards take time. We know that the recognition can sometimes appear a bit fleeting. What does it actually mean? Well, it's been great, actually, to think about these questions, and I'm just going to share a few reflections with you now, and I'm going to be around all afternoon, so if there's anything that I say jogs in any way, then I'm happy to discuss these reflections a bit further. So, reflecting on this, my mind kept going back to one company which over the years I have seen entering and winning a huge number of awards, including having a big win at the CIPS Excellence in Procurement Awards last year. And that company is Innocent Drinks. Now, I first came across them decades ago when the founders entered the Growing Business Awards, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. And they came along, the three of them, Richard and Adam and John, and they bounced into the room and they told their origin story of Innocent, about how they'd been at a music festival and they'd been selling these smoothies that they'd developed, and they put up this sign which said, should we give up our well-paid jobs to sell these smoothies? And they asked people to put bottles in a bucket to say yes or no. And, you know, the rest is history. And ever since then, I've noticed the company, they've always entered a lot of awards. A lot of the ones that I've been involved with, they've entered awards for their products, for their HR practices, for their offices at Innocent Towers, for their sustainability practices. And they put a huge amount of effort, clearly, and investment into this activity. And I sort of was thinking to myself, why have they done that? What have they? How come they've been so active in the way they've done that? And what has it achieved anything? And actually, I think it has clearly achieved something. And I think fundamentally what that is is it's established by sharing constantly about their practices, how they go about doing things. It's given us a sense that we know something about this company. We've got a relationship with it. Every time I go into a shop, and this is a long time after the founding story, and even today, if you go into a shop and you see an innocent product, there's something friendly and familiar about it. Now, you could argue about whether it's the same company as it has been in the past, all those things. But there's something in there that many of us respond to. We feel as if we've got something of a relationship there. And I think that is in part down to its investment over a long period of time in putting itself forward for awards and actively participating in awards programs. Now, I get it. There's one thing using awards to promote a consumer products business and products that you see in the shops. And you might say, well, what does that mean for me? You know, we're not a consumer-facing function. What's the correlation between pushing a product and pushing a procurement function or people or initiatives? But I do think that the dynamic is fundamentally the same. The logic of the process is that you're trying to establish a relationship with a certain key audience. Now, that key audience might be the external world, the consumer, but it could be your internal stakeholders. It could be the C-suite in your organization to build profile there. It could be with a local community. It could be with any number of stakeholders. The point is that you are trying to establish an open, honest relationship and a sense of connection with those communities. And I think that's what awards fundamentally enable you to do. Let me just make sure I haven't missed anything else about what I meant to say about Innocent and the awards. But no, I think those are the key things. I think that what really we're trying to do is, to build this relationship, whoever it may be with. It's about good vibes, I think, fundamentally. You can, through an awards program, send good vibes to the audience that you are particularly trying to target. Now, at CIPS, over the past year, what we've tried to do is respond to that, that sense of what awards can achieve by expanding this Excellence in Procurement Awards program. So it is no longer about one night, a great night though it is, at the awards itself. Following the awards, we have built the Excellence in Procurement webinar program where we invite winners and candidates to share their stories. We've celebrated those stories on podcasts, on platforms like this, at the CIPS Futures event. So if you choose to tell your story and you commit to telling your story, then we are with you to help you amplify the good vibes that we think that that telling that story can generate. So we will back you as much as we can in celebrating the achievements that you want to communicate. Just a final few points before I hand back to James about what it takes, though, fundamentally to make an awards program work for you. And just a few thoughts on this, and some of these are reflected on the bullet points here. I think you've got to commit to it. If you're going to enter an awards program or get involved in an awards program, commit to it wholeheartedly. Bring your team along with you. Work with your team to put together your evidence. Use it as an opportunity when you're gathering evidence to engage with others in your organisation. That's the ripples of good vibes that you can help to project. I'm going to say this, but I think it makes a difference. If you're going to enter awards, enter the prestigious ones. I would say that. I'm here talking about the CIPS Awards, but I think it makes a difference. Celebrate shortlistings. that's an achievement in itself. Put them out on your social media, celebrate them internally, get other people involved in your putting together your awards. If you're fortunate enough to win one, then clearly you want to represent that both within your organisation and outside of it. So commit to it and enjoy the ride. I wish you all success if you do end up putting forward an entry this year. I hope you do. We look forward to hearing about them and hearing your stories. I hope those points there are of some use to you and some of my reflections. As I say, I'm very happy to talk, chat later on, but enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I'll hand you back now to James. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Matthew. And you mentioned Innocent. I believe they did actually win a CIPS Excellence in Procurement and Supply Award a couple of years ago for their sustainability work in, I think, building their amazing sort of HQ and juicer, I think they called it, in Rotterdam. So it's on one of the webinars actually from last year. So do go and have a look back at that, because it's really, really impressive. Right, it's now time to hear from 3 fantastic award winners and from last year, and who are going to share some of their stories and learnings from the process. We're going to invite them up one by one, and then at the end we'll have them all up here for a Q&A so you can put your questions to them. But first, allow me to introduce Simon Hannak, Global Head of Procurement at Costa Coffee, to present his award-winning entry from 2024 for Best Procurement Transformation Programme. So, Simon, I will hand over to you.
So, Simon Hannak, MCIPS. I feel really proud to have MCIPS after my name. So I know I'm a little bit sad. I'm a passionate procurement person. I love procurement. I've been doing it for 20 years, right? And it's an honour to be stood on this stage right now talking about the CIPS Awards. I'm the Global Head of Procurement at Costa, and I'm also the Vice Chair at the Derbyshire and East Midlands CIPS Committee. So you can see that I'm very much sort of part and parcel of the whole CIPS setup, and I really, really enjoy being part of the committee as well. Anyway, we're not here to talk about me. Costa Coffee, I'm sure you all know the brand. It's recently been voted for the 15th year in a row the nation's favourite coffee shop. We operate in 47 markets, and we have over 4,000 stores. And we operate across express, so our machines that you may see in service stations, away from home, that we probably sell in Sainsbury's, and ready to drink, and plus a number of other channels that we operate, from machines to you name it. We probably do it in the coffee world. The procurement team, so based in London and Loudwater, we have a team of around 30 colleagues. We manage 1,100 suppliers, and it's around about £1 billion spend. And as a procurement professional, it's always important to talk about how many suppliers and how much spend. 50% or thereabouts of the team are CIPS qualified, so pretty high from a sort of percentage point of view. And we have 6 people studying towards CIPS through the apprenticeship levy. And I'm joined today by 4 of the team here, some of which are actually studying towards CIPS as well. So it's great to be here as a team. So I've only got a few slides, I promise, and we're going to go very quickly over the award that we submitted and won. And it was the Best Procurement Transformation Award. And by the way, before I start, I should say that I've been involved in a number of companies, and I've been part of 4 different submissions. So it's taken 4 times just to get there and actually win an award. Shortlisted a few times, been to the event a couple of times, really enjoyed it, but I was really motivated to go on and keep pushing and pushing to win. And actually, you mentioned it earlier, Innocent. So Innocent are part of the Coca-Cola business. The Coca-Cola business purchased Costa in 2019. And so they actually, I remember reading about their submission, reading about their award, and that motivated me even further to carry on. But there lies the challenge, I see. The challenge that the Costa Coffee team had back in 2023, that 80% of the team were new. So I mentioned Coca-Cola. So back in, you may know, in 1995, Costa was acquired by Whitbread, and in 2019, it was purchased by Coke. That meant a lot of change, a lot of great support from the parent company, a lot of resources, a lot of investment, but it meant that we're going through a huge change program. And that continued into 2023. And unfortunately, we lost one of the officers. There was a reorganization, consultation. Just being honest with you, it was just really, really tough, right? So as that year started, we had a brand new team, pretty much brand new procurement director, global procurement director that came in from Coke, who was actually based in Turkey prior to joining our team. So really messy. And as you might expect, because the team was going through, the business as a whole was going through so much change, we were behind plan, behind on gross margin, behind on sales, behind on cash, right? And especially against the expectations of our parent company, because they paid a lot of money for Costa Coffee, right? And they wanted to get us running and operating as quickly as possible, but difficult with all the change. And then I don't need to mention inflation to a room full of procurement professionals, but if you go back a couple of years, we all bear the scars of huge inflation across all major commodities. And then, of course, linked to all of that, and probably quite reasonable and understandable that the engagement scores across the team were very, very low. So our sort of Glint surveys, our survey engagement surveys that we issue twice a year were extremely low, and a massive concern for the management team. Anyway, so that was the backdrop. That's what we wrote about. We were honest and authentic and very clear about the challenges that as a business we had, and we put that into the submission. We didn't want to hide anything. We wanted to expose and share the story. And in fact, I joined probably after Q1 of 2023, so I was representing the teams. So the people the team members that had been there from the start for a long time really wanted their story to be heard. It was important, and we all jumped in to write the story. And the actions we took, we implemented a program. Many procurement functions do this, right? You have to get behind a program, and our program was the Fuel for Growth program, okay? And it's still in existence now, and it's the main sort of focal point. How we engage with our stakeholders, it opens up the doors for discussions around commercials and cost savings and efficiency savings, and that's what we started. Okay, so that was great to get behind. Digital platforms and Power BI. Again, it's easy to say, but during that change program, we implemented GEP. Other brands do exist. But it was hard. It was hard to implement. The whole team had to get behind it. We had to get resource from outside the department to help implement GEP. 3 different modules to manage our contracts, our sourcing, and SRM for the business, supplemented by Power BI. So we needed data. We needed to be able to manage data, find the opportunities, look at the gap analysis. So Power BI became very important too. And then strategic sourcing and control, again, as you might expect. And I'm reading off things that from Procurement 101. But what you hope you can see here is that we were covering lots and lots of different things at once, from a brand new team to implementing process control and digital platforms. And we had a people first approach. So the Glint surveys, the engagement surveys, we had to take those lessons and learnings from the team and really make it, really improve upon that. And we managed to do that. And then the results, okay? So what I think we're most proud of as a business, so as a department and a business, is the number of projects that we drove and led, totaling 235 projects, right? So and that is including massive sustainability projects in change of our dairy and milk supplies, 3PL changes, electricity hedging and moving electricity partners, everything to try and make a big difference to the business. And as a result, we had a 74% uplift in our results, so be it cost savings or cash flow improvements or efficiency gains or sustainability targets. We smashed the previous year's targets by 74%, which is incredible given that 80% of the team were brand new. And and as a result, we had a huge uplift, not a perfect uplift, but a huge uplift in the engagement surveys. And again, when we talk about submissions and writing an authentic submission, we don't hide from the fact that we aren't yet world class. We implemented a lot. We put in some new practices, some governance and controls and systems and digital platforms, but we're still learning, right? So what we had to demonstrate was the story that we had been on and how the people, it is a people-first mentality, and that all came together. When you add everything together, it made for a very convincing and compelling story. And this is the result, okay? So just a few pictures, but you can see in these pictures how proud the team are to have won the award, to have been involved in writing the submission, to being on the stage, to all the after-party pictures that I can't share. You can see here in the middle our CEO with our procurement director in the middle, acknowledging success. So that sort of ripple effect throughout the business was really nice to see. We really got on the back of that. It opened more doors. We managed to speak to more stakeholders. We got high fives in the corridor, right? It was really, really positive. And then the stuff that, admittedly, I'm not so good at, social media, the LinkedIn, if that's social media, we managed to post and share our story and inspire, I hope, a few more people to go and put forward their submissions. So that's our story. I hope it's of interest. I hope it inspires at least one person to go ahead. Remember, it took me personally 4 attempts. Some members of my team were lucky to, 1 for 1. But yeah, it's not easy, but it's really, really worthwhile putting some effort behind this. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, that was great to see, and I think some of those pictures really demonstrate the impact it can have, not just on the team that wins the award, but the team connected to it and the wider business. And it's great branding on those slides. It really made me want a coffee and a flat white. So very millennial thing to say, but thank you. Yeah, it was really, really great to hear from you, Simon. So next up, we've got Emma Briggs. Emma is Director of Procurement and Sustainability at Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing, or MTVH, which feels like slightly easier to say. They won the Procurement Team of the Year for Small Organisation category, so it really was a fantastic achievement for the guys at MTVH. So Emma, I will hand over to you to tell your story.
I'm going to steal some of your ideas. I think I might have a submission for this year, a slightly rehashed version of what I'm going to talk you through. Well, we'll see. So yeah, I'm Emma Briggs, Director of Procurement and Sustainability at MTVH. Can you all see me? I'm quite short. Yeah, we did indeed win Procurement Team of the Year, small organisation. We're on the cusp of being small or large, but firmly sat in the small bucket. And certainly aren't anywhere near as the larger organisations. So Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing, as the name might suggest, it was a merger about 5.5 years ago of Metropolitan and Thames Valley Housing. We are a housing association that owns about 60,000 properties. We also build new homes each year. Any public sector procurement people in the room? Because I'm thank you. Oh, there's one. Oh, 2, good. So I'm representing the public sector for you today, because on the backdrop of everything I'm about to say is in 13 days, we go live with a new Procurement Act, which you two will know about. So in the backdrop of all of what I'm about to go through, there's also huge regulatory changes, the biggest change in a generation to happen to public sector procurement in the UK. But I don't harp on about that because I didn't think my audience would include many of you. So like I say, we're a housing association. We're in effect a social landlord. We have 60,000 properties, just over 100,000 residents in those properties. We operate across London, the South East, East Anglia, East Midlands, and up as far north actually as Sheffield, I found out the other day. And we're a social landlord, like I say. We offer properties at slightly reduced rates compared to market rents. They're typically about 60% less. We also offer care and support services and offer specialist support to older people or those with mental health or transitional services for people, to either marginalised or vulnerable people. And we also own a shared ownership brand called Resi. So we have a sales and marketing division too. And lastly, just as an explanation of who we are, we're part of the National Housing Federation. We are one of the G15, so London's largest housing organisations, which house 1 in 10 Londoners between us. So just give that some thought, actually, and to understand the scale of what we do and therefore the impact that we have. We also, of course, being one of the G15, we influence policy for the benefits of our residents, because ultimately at the core of what we do is the social purpose and the social value. So if I go on. So what prompted our submission last year? Like Simon, it was our 3rd year on the trot that we had made a submission. First 2 years we were shortlisted, which was great. 3rd year shortlisted, and then we won. But what prompted our submission was, so 3 years ago, ish, so whatever time period you're looking at, ultimately when I became head of the department, we made a conscious decision to move from a tactical procurement function, which whether you're in the public or private sector, you'll know what that means, yeah? Often thought of as the underdog, bit of an administrative function, running tenders, very tactical, quite ad hoc, very unplanned, which led us to being incredibly overburdened, overstretched, under-resourced, with 0 budget available to do anything with that, which for me was just criminal, because I was wasting the talent that was in my team, and of course my own, and just wasting talent, time, resources, the whole shebang. And I certainly realised, along with my leadership team, that I realised we needed to do something fundamentally different. So we needed to talk about value in all its senses and what that means to our residents, our colleagues, our suppliers, and we needed to fundamentally change from being a tactical division to thinking and delivering more strategic initiatives. And we embarked on a process to kind of reimagine and reposition ourselves as strategic enablers to our organisation, but also putting the customers at the heart, our residents at the heart of everything that we do. Just a side issue, actually, I hadn't prepared slides on my team. We're a team of 11. We're responsible for about £500 million worth of spend. We have just shy of 2,000 suppliers, and we run about 100 to 150 competitive tenders each year. So we're busy. There's only actually 4 category managers leading on all of those tenders, so it's an awful lot of work for just 4 people. So we spent time imagining, visioneering, if that's a word, who we could possibly be as our team. We dug deep, really, to understand what was important to us, and we questioned our current status. We sought feedback from stakeholders and our suppliers, which was hard to hear at times, and we dared to dream as to what we could be known for. So we kind of got ourselves into the mindset of what legacy would we want to leave as custodians of the current procurement team. What legacy do we want to leave once we ultimately go? And we agreed on our focus areas, and here they are at the top. So commercial leadership in a regulated environment, championing sustainable procurement and delivering our social purpose, and that we were easy to do business with. But underpinning all of that was to ensure that we have happy customers, whether they be internal, but specifically focused on our residents, which to my knowledge was the first time that our residents had been mentioned in any procurement strategy in our business's history, and that we are one team driving for high performance. Now, I had spent 12 to 13 years in the private sector where there's arguably a bit more investment in those types of things, customers and team development, but I took a lot of that ethos and those kind of practical applications as to what that could look like in a public sector environment. And ultimately, we thought about what we wanted to be known for and how we would deliver it. So that's our current strategy. We're in year 2 of that strategy right now. We've just had our away day, actually, and we've agreed our projects, the KPIs and the deliverables that sit underneath that, which then makes my job and that of my procurement leadership team really easy because the objectives are clear. People have agreed to them. They've almost written them for themselves. So come the new financial year in April, job's done. What did winning mean to us? Very similar slide. Equally as drunk, perhaps, as well. So in short, it felt like all our efforts had been worth it. I think, like I say, it was our 3rd year having been shortlisted. And when we launched our strategy, we didn't have CIPS in our mind. We just knew we needed to make a fundamental shift. And when we started when we agreed our strategy and when we started communicating our strategy initially to our colleagues, we kind of still had to keep the lights on and be the tactical force that they'd always known us for, but whilst also driving to make some of those strategic changes. But the team really quickly started to see some of the positive differences that a shift in mindset was having. And it was clear that there were pockets of our organisation that were crying out for this change. They'd wanted us to have a seat at their table, influencing their commercial decisions and the supplier performance metrics that they were reviewing. There were others who arguably are still today a little more resistant, but they wanted us to become the strategic partner. And I would say it's been a slow but really purposeful journey, because the whole team, and we've gone through various iterations of staff members. We're now about 50% new people in the team and 50% old. But making that shift from tacticals to strategic has now delivered £12 million just this financial year in cost avoidance savings and £2 million in bottom line savings. We've just also run our first ever customer panel, so we have resident representatives for the various schemes that we run, and we've just run our first ever procurement customer panel session, which was brilliant. I'm just trying to find new and creative ways to fix quite long-standing issues, quite frankly. And the result is our colleagues feel more supported, residents are getting more insight as to what we do and how we do it and how what we do impacts them. And ultimately, the procurement team cut off some of that was me actually at the top, I couldn't work out how to get my head in the shot. Our team feel more valued. They feel that their skills are being utilised far more effectively and that they have more of a voice in shaping some of the key decisions we make at MTVH. And how have we benefited? So there's tons of stuff. These were just off the top of my head. I've got no notes now, so I'll be referring to the slide. But colleague engagement has been excellent at all levels. So I talk about the colleagues that we deal with that ultimately manage the contracts that we award. But actually my exec team, my board, my audit and risk committee, they are all far more aware of what we do and how we can add value. So we don't just run tenders, but I think it's led to so many other opportunities. And to jump to the kind of strategic alignment and the innovation opportunities that are on that slide. About a year and a half ago, I was asked, would you like to take sustainability and lead sustainability for the organisation, which as a house builder and as an owner of 60,000 properties, the carbon footprint of that is significant. So yeah, I will take that on. And they saw us as a credible partner to lead on the sustainability agenda for MTVH. Customer value. We produce newsletters every month for our residents. Procurement now have a regular feature on that. We talk about the tenders and the activities that we're undertaking that impact our customers. We're honest, we're open, we tell them when costs are going to go up, because a lot of our residents pay a service charge if they're leaseholders, so they obviously fluctuate with the costs that we bear as an organisation. Of course, the team has clarity of focus. Like I say, it's easy to write objectives every year because they're clear. We've all agreed what the focus areas are. We understand and distill that into meaningful and measurable projects. Recognition, it goes without saying. I'm stood here today getting even more recognition for what we do, shouting the good shout for housing associations across the country too. Innovation, I touched on that around sustainability, but we've also managed, and I know a room of private sector people won't believe me when I say this, SRM is a concept that the private sector have been doing for decades, yeah? You all know it, you know how it works, and that it works. Public sector, I would probably have to spell out what SRM meant to them and what it stood for. It's a very new concept. It's something I've done for decades, but actually we've now been given, if you like, permission or the ability to plough on at full speed with SRM. We've had a new system invested in for us, excuse me, and the future is incredibly bright when it comes to managing our suppliers' performance and of course their contracts too. And interestingly then, when I talk about suppliers, we've got about 2,000 of them. It's kind of a never-ending addition that we seem to keep doing to keep all the lights on, quite literally. But our suppliers really listened and understood what it meant for us to win this CIPS award. And I would guess I mean, personally, I think the measure of that, I've been invited to so many different roundtables, events, discussions, to not specifically talk about CIPS, but about how we've made this tactical to strategic change. And it's been incredibly powerful. And in fact, although I'm there often to talk about these things as I am today, it gives me a learning every time to hear and be questioned and challenged on some of the stuff. And of course, in team performance, you saw the pictures before, it kind of goes without saying. And all I will end on is that it costs about 200 quid to make your submission to the CIPS Awards, the Excellence in Procurement Awards. And if what myself and Simon, and I know the rest of the guys are about to talk about, if that isn't a good investment in your money and in your time, then what is? Because actually a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, and these are the stuff that's tangible, so much of it is intangible, but is so, so worth it. So I'd urge you all to do the same, because we certainly will. We see you at the events in September this year. Thank you.
You know, very different organisations there. You know, Costa, very different to a housing association, but both showed the impact that procurement can make, not just on cost cutting, but on so many different aspects of your objectives. And to recognise that, you know, looking back after 3 years with an award win, it's like that physical representation, right, of everything you've achieved, and sort of that permanent placeholder in your mind. So that's brilliant. Right, next up, we've got two speakers, and we'll allow it, given it's their building. Sam Woodhouse and Desi Chadwick, both part of Sainsbury's procurement and supplier management team. So they're going to talk through about their extremely successful trip to the CIPS Excellence Awards in September, where Sainsbury's picked up not just 2 category awards, but also scooped the overall winner of the night. So Desi, Sam, I will pass over to you.
Delighted to host you here at the Sainsbury's Store Support Centre in London. Of course, we've got store support centres elsewhere in the UK. We're going to spend about 15 minutes or so talking you through our entries, our successful entries, dare I say, as we just heard, for the September Awards. So, before we do that, just a bit about us. We've kept the cleanest possible pictures that we possibly could. There were others. We chose to not put them on this slide. But so we're a team of about 80 people, and we've been through a recent expansion. We've recently taken on some enhanced responsibilities about supply management, and as a result, the team has grown. And these awards have been really important through that process, and I'll explain a bit more about that later on. Here we go. The spend number, we face into about 4 billion of spend. That's our goods not for resale, effectively our indirects. The team will do about 600 sourcing activities over the course of a year, from the very, very large strategic project through to some slightly more tactical ones, but in the main playing absolutely in that strategic spot. And collectively, we manage about 2,000 suppliers.
And what an evening it was last September for us, indeed. This is just the catalogue of awards that we scooped at that evening. But what I wanted to talk about actually is the feeling that it gave us that evening, for not just for me, who is behind at least one of those projects that you see here, but for us as a whole team in procurement. There was laughter, there was tears, emotions running really high. But what's really stuck with me from that evening is the immense sense of pride of the achievements of the entire team that sat behind this. And for that alone, I really encourage you to invest the time and effort in submitting your award. It's worth even for being there and in the evening. So we're really delighted to be able to share a little bit more with you about the submissions that stand behind these awards. What a recognition it is to have one of our own rising stars, Adele, being recognised in a fiercely competitive category. They all are, by the way. But Young Procurement Talent of the Year is becoming tougher and tougher with young people coming into the profession, which is great news for the profession. What we think took Adele to scoop this highly commended prize is not only the brilliant business degree that she's got or the technical skills that she's acquired through her grad scheme joining the industry at Nissan, but what made her really win stakeholders and achieve great results, influencing them and procuring with value, not just cost in mind, is her authentic leadership style. The way she engages constructively to challenge across the board is something that is absolutely standing out for her. And the value for the rest of the team is seeing how this exemplary behavior could get you a great recognition. So the effect on the rest of her peers has been immense with that. Sam.
So I'll spend just a short amount of time talking through our sustainability entry, our winning sustainability entry. This isn't what we're going to talk about most. Desi will take you through our Collaborative Teamwork Award in a minute. But just coming back to that point around business and really being in tune with the business and recognizing that, well, certainly in the private sector, our purpose is fundamentally business. So this was a procurement-led initiative to build and deliver an EV charging network for our customers utilising our store network. Now, we knew that we needed to have a presence in this space. Sainsbury's, of course, has quite an extensive petrol filling station estate, quite a large petrol businesses, as most of the grocery retailers do. But we needed to move forward. We needed to have a natural hedge in this place for the future. And of course, it's a massive part of our sustainability agenda to enable e-mobility, not only for our customers, but also increasingly within our own operations. So how did we do it? Well, we set about investigating what would need to be true in order to deliver this. We looked at partnerships. We looked at doing deals with other network operators, so-called CPOs. We looked at doing deals with car manufacturers. But what we realised and what we found out as we went through that whole research phase was that, having looked at the commercials and started to build our understanding of the commercials, is that with the attributes that we already had, the assets that we had in the form of our stores, our abilities around construction, our expertise in tech, payments, crucially, loyalty through Nectar, that we actually had all of the ingredients to hand to allow us to do this ourselves. So we as procurement set about designing a supply chain in order to do that. That then led to a startup business within Sainsbury's with its own dedicated team operating on startup principles. And if anyone's been able to do that or had the opportunity to do that with a large business, you know it's really, really hard because you're having to work in an entirely different way. And that startup business became Smart Charge, which is now, this slide is out of date. We've actually got 71 hubs nationwide and is the latest brand to the Sainsbury's roster alongside Argos, Habitat 2 and Nectar. So, Desi, do you want to take us through the main purpose of this conversation?
Yes. This one feels personal. This is a project that I spent 4 out of my 5 years at Sainsbury's at. So I'm going to attempt to tell you in a simple way, in the same way we did in our submission, what this project is actually about. So for this entry in Collaborative Teamwork Project, we chose to submit our Logistics Transformation Collaborative Teamwork Project. Essentially, it's a project led, not only led, but instigated by procurement that ultimately resulted in, if I may say so, one of the largest commercial resets in the UK distribution network done for decades. I'll just let that sit there for a minute, just for a sense of scale. After more than 2 years of collaboration, we outsourced the majority of Sainsbury's and Argos warehousing and distribution network to strategic partners, something that wasn't done ever before at that scale. What I mean by that is it took a year to plan, 2 years to execute commercially, and 18 months to actually physically implement this, a process through which 7,000 colleagues changed their employer. But why we did this? At the outset of Simon Roberts' tenure at the helm of Sainsbury's, coincidentally the pandemic year, our business pivoted way back towards its roots in winning in food. We wanted to be the best in everything. We wanted to give our customers the best availability, the best fulfillment proposition, the best innovation they can get. But we realized that our network simply wasn't up to that task. So the collaboration, teamwork from this project resulted in essentially transforming what was a patchwork quilt of isolated local agreements into a strategic network run by partners. With longevity in mind, these partnerships today are the backbone of how we serve all of our customers across our multi-brand channels. In the next page, I wanted to lift the curtain a little bit on what we believe was the success, not just of the project, but the simple way we put it to the CIPS Award judges in what makes us successful in this. Firstly, to challenge an area of the business that hasn't been looked at for decades, we've challenged ourselves So invited blue sky thinking from across functions in the business, but also externally from incumbent and potentially new partners. We've brainstormed and workshopped. You can only imagine the hours that went into this. But importantly, it's what helped us to challenge the status quo, gathering voices from across the spectrum within our business and externally. It is what actually secured us a board sponsorship in this. To succeed with a change of that scale, you have to have it. And what really helped us secure this is that we translated hypotheses into real tangible results that pointed to how this project is going to help us achieve our strategic objectives at Sainsbury's. We could have easily broken that trust if we didn't have the credible data that stood behind the output that we needed the partners to assess what the opportunities are, the analysis of what they actually can return to our business. All of this needed a laser focus, and that's what we gave it throughout. We were engaging on a scale never seen within our business before, far-reaching across functions, and that needed to be supported by really robust governance. That's what we've implemented, and it helped us move away from a hypothesis to a true commercial project, and more importantly, it was the thing that helped us deliver it without any impact to our trade. And finally, and that one is a really difficult one for procurement, we had to recognize that changing hearts and minds takes time. So this was a marathon, not a race. It was important because that allowed us to collect the voices of our customers and colleagues and make sure that they're taken into account in every decision making. And finally, we wanted to put it simply in terms of why we believe this was a successful project and is worthy of at least a listing and an award. It was important that we find a tangible way to link the results of it into how they help Sainsbury's strategic objectives, and this is a snapshot of a few of them. So these 3 partnerships that we have established, they very clearly and still to this date contribute to our Save and Invest to Win, one of our 4 outcomes pillars underneath the purpose of Sainsbury's. Having a reliable logistics service means we can offer our customers upwards of 99% availability, something critical for our first choice in food. And it's a project that helps us transform the function in procurement itself. At the end of this project, we took accountability for managing these contracts commercially in the life of them, so we're staying shoulder to shoulder with our operational stakeholders to collaborate throughout the life of those contracts, making sure that they deliver on their promise. I said it was personal. It still is. I'm still very much in this role, and I manage these 3 partners, and I'm still delighted that to this day, they are instrumental in making sure that Sainsbury's delivers on its purpose. This is the cheesy moment of delivering, making good food, joyful, accessible, and affordable for everyone every day.
So we were asked to reflect on what we thought the foundations for success were, and just a couple of ones to pull out. Really, really obvious, really simple, but you can get lost in this, trust me, because we've been there before in previous awards where we didn't win. Make sure that the project fits the award criteria. Do it that way around. Look at your project roster, understand what is in front of you, what your team have done, and then see what fits. Don't try to do it the other way around. It will come unstuck. Similarly, focus on the key themes. Be really clear and test yourselves and your team about what it is that you're trying to say. And in doing so, be really clear about how you talk about it. Now, that is hard, right? And it's hard for procurement professionals. We're in it every day. We know our organisation. We can get lost in the weeds. So one thing that we found really helpful, actually, was to get outside perspective. Not to get others to help you write, but to get others to help you critique it. Give it to someone who doesn't know your organisations as well as you, as the judges most likely won't. They'll all be well-standing members of the procurement community, but they won't know the intricate details and ins and outs of your business. So think about it from the reader's perspective. That's really important. And I think bringing it back to the alignment to the business goals, as Desi just said, making it all about food, all about customers, making it about delivering joyful experiences to our customers every day, had to be at the heart not only of the project, because it was, but also about how we put together that the submission and how we wrote about it. And then lastly, endorsements, very, very useful we found, because again, it gave us the opportunity to test. Had we really done a good job here? And when you find that people, both internally and externally, are willing to endorse you and the success that your team has had, that's very powerful, whether that's your board, whether that's other internal senior stakeholders, or in fact, as we also managed to do, through our own suppliers as well, who are happy to be part of this process. So just a couple of reflections then on how we benefit, and I kind of echo everything that Simon and Emma said before. You know, it's a great moment to celebrate with the team. It's a great moment of recognition. Procurement sometimes can operate in the shadows, and it's great for people who've been doing it for a long time or a short amount of time to be able to really pull it out, show their friends and family, guys, we won this incredible award that means a huge amount within this profession. Obviously, media coverage, LinkedIn is incredibly useful to communicate in ways big and small about what your achievements are. That then is seen by prospective people who want to work for you, prospective recruits. It's seen by suppliers, both current and new. And certainly on recruitment, we found it very, very helpful. As I said, we were going through an expansion of the team towards the latter end of the year, and this was referenced continuously by people who wanted to come and work for us. They saw the award, they recognised and felt that, you know, we were at least, you know, getting towards world class, if not there. I don't know if anyone ever will be world class in this space, but they recognised how strong we were as an organisation and where we were playing within the business. And of course, the development that it gives your team in terms of putting it on their CV and being able to talk about that in future roles, it's incredibly important for all of us as a collection of individuals within the team. So I'd sum up by saying that applying is a worthy exercise, not least because it allows you to really test yourself on those projects. Even if you decide, actually, no, the award isn't right, I don't think it fits the criteria, but it's been great to go through the process to really test ourselves. And of course, once you do put it out there, it catalogues what you've achieved. It lives on for years. It's not just a once-off, one-year process. People will be able to reference that, talk about it, and go back and view it for many years down the line. So to wrap up, we were absolutely honoured to have won. We had a great night on the night, of course. We're really proud of the team for the incredible amount of work that went into the projects themselves, but also into the submissions, and we're grateful to CIPS for the opportunity to showcase it. So for those applying this year, very best of luck. Thank you.
We will move straight on to questions. Brilliant. Does anybody have any questions initially? I've got a few already, but if anybody has any, there's a mic going round. We've also got mics. Oh no, we'll just use the mic going round. So one there, perfect.
Hi there. I really liked how you mentioned your graduate programme, and are you planning on expanding that or kind of sharing ideas across the industry for graduates and placement students? That's to anyone.
Yeah. Is that to us? I'm happy to take that.
Yes, I think it's for Sainsbury's.
Yeah. Just if anyone's got a view on graduates in procurement.
We'll start with you, Sam. And
yeah. So we've had graduate programs in the past. We don't currently have one, but what we have is a pathway and an entry for junior buyers to get into the department. And we tend to find that pathway is through other parts of the business. Sainsbury's, of course, is a huge organisation, so we have quite a successful intake on that front. And again, of course, this type of recognition just gives credibility to those people and gives them confidence that they would actually come and want to work for procurement if they haven't perhaps heard of it and they don't quite understand what it is and does. We can point to awards like this and say, well, actually, from a professional point of view, this is a really valuable profession for you to start working in. Otherwise, people may not want to come and join, but that's what we find is beneficial.
Simon, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that at all about whether you do anything from a graduate perspective, but also...
Yes, we do, and I'm looking at one right now. I don't want to embarrass Harry, but Harry's on our current graduate scheme. We support those sorts of schemes. We think they're brilliant. It really helps to get, I guess, young talent into the department. I think if you go back 5 or 6 years ago, there was a challenge, especially around sort of getting graduates into the functions, but I think CIPS over at least the recent years has really excelled in terms of how it's expanded its sort of the apprenticeship levy courses and how we've tapped into that, and sort of how the facilities and the training materials have become a bit more online and a bit more inclusive. So yeah, something that we really support within the business.
Emma, is anything to add to that? Anything to add to what it's done for your team, and whether it be retention or recruitment from a business perspective?
Honestly, the reason I said earlier that we had 50% new and 50% old is because some people got the award as part of the winning team and left. But they left with, the very best of luck from all of us and wishing them well, because they were high-performing individuals as part of a high-performing team. And it was the right time for them to move on. But they certainly used the award as, they admitted they used the award as one of their selling features when they went to new employers. And the public sector, well, certainly in housing anyway, there's no such thing as graduate schemes as per se. But there is, and there's a different approach, let's say, to talent management. I would say the public sector typically is less competitive. People who, I can say that in fairly safe company. However, what the public sector is starting to see is people like me coming into the public sector with no regulatory experience whatsoever 5.5 years ago, and still being able to, curate teams and win awards like this. Housing specifically can be quite a closed industry. Many people in housing, if you're suppliers to the housing industry is quite a closed sector. People have been there for years, it seems, and all they've ever worked in is housing or related industries. We do use, you mentioned the apprenticeship levy though, we are all over that. There's a lot of apprenticeships going on at all levels in our organisation. So grad schemes, no, but pretty much everything else we do well.
Fantastic. Any more questions from the audience at the moment? We've got 2 over there, so we'll go one by one.
My question is just for you, Emma. How long would you say it took, your team to go to a more strategic procurement team from what it was before?
I'd say we're still trying with some stakeholders. Some stakeholders come to us and they just want us to find a compliant way to award a contract, or they just want us to run the quickest, dirtiest tender to get them the result that they already know they want. Yeah, we're all used to that, whatever industry you're in. And we still have to do that because we still have, leaking roofs or damp and mould in someone's property or antisocial behaviour or whatever's going on in our resident communities. We still have to do that. We still have to react. But I would say probably the light bulb moment for me wasn't actually winning the award. It was before it, when I was able to write job adverts and get really good people through the door who wouldn't normally have applied. And I think because we'd done a lot of work with our suppliers as well to help them understand the journey we were going on and the changes we wanted to make to how they were managed, how we would hold them to account more. Initially, stakeholders who ultimately manage those supplier relationships didn't really want us treading on their toes. They manage the suppliers once they're in contract. We didn't. But actually, once the suppliers were on board, they helped us unwittingly, and it wasn't part of our strategy, but they helped us to turn the table slightly, and they were asking stakeholders who were often we were at odds with to help us to make the changes that we wanted to make. But I wouldn't say we've done it. It's absolutely, I'd have left by now, wouldn't I, if I'd say big tick in the box. It's taken, I've been director now for 3 years, and I'm 50% there, I'd say, in terms of where I think we need to be and how I think we need to strategically partner in all the areas that we should be adding value in.
Fantastic. It was great, and I think all of you were open about being honest as to the challenges involved and the start of your journey compared to the end. And it's really interesting to hear that, because it can show a real narrative and a real structure to your entry, which is fantastic. I know there was another question just over there.
It was for Emma as well, actually. Very very similar vein. Just on the transformation, so obviously I've come in and out of public sector as well, so just wanted to understand, was there a bit of a reluctance within your team as well, in terms of, well, we've always done it this way, the regulations say X, so we can't talk to people, etc., etc. Just wondered how you broke down some of those barriers within your team as well, or if you had to.
They're not here anymore.
Okay.
Is one of the ways, which is, again, not very common in the public sector. But to manage my team based on their performance was really important to me. I'd seen it work in my previous roles, one way, harsh but fair. There was a bit of reluctance because they'd done various kind of branding exercises. They reimagined themselves in the past with previous leaders. But I did it on practically, if anyone's looking for advice, I did it in away days. I did it off-site in away days where we could get everything out. We'd sought feedback from our customers, our stakeholders, colleagues basically. And what we thought we were known for was true. Administrative, too long, too cumbersome, too much red tape, too many regulations, too many forms to fill in. Yeah, and that will sound familiar to many of you, I'm sure. And we were like, we're cooler than that. We don't want to be known as those types of people. That might be the kind of public sector stereotypical, role for a procurement person, but we're not that. And so it was kind of daring to dream. But I guess reluctance is probably the wrong word. They weren't reluctant. They were hungry for the change. But they had been hungry for the change, and I guess they'd lost a bit of momentum and belief that they could do it. And I guess for me as their leader, I'm not sure what I did. Probably bribery and corruption, as all good procurement teams are good at. Feeding them with lots of food and cake and getting them to start to believe in themselves was probably the thing that clinched it, really.
Love that takeaway for today. Procurement is cool. It is. It does so much. It does so much, as we've seen from the presentations. And I'm sticking to that note about bringing people along with you. We'll come to both of you guys if that's okay. So Simon, I know you mentioned that it was, you had a clear vision from the outset and what you wanted to achieve, but you mentioned that bringing the team along was one of the hardest parts of that transformation. It's often the people and the culture that is the biggest challenge, right, compared to the actual logistics of it. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it wasn't just the procurement function that was going through change, right? So I think as an organisation, we're going through a lot of change. And I must say, hats off to supporting functions. In general, we're seen as a supporting function, right? So our HR colleagues, our finance colleagues, our legal colleagues, we're all going in the same direction. And it's testament to a very good culture and a set of values throughout the whole business. And if you can get on the back of that, we've all got a common purpose, and actually some really great leadership from board level as well. So the whole business has to push in the same direction, and if you start speaking the same language and have the same sort of common goal, it really does help.
Fantastic. And Desi, I know you obviously worked a lot on for 4 years, I think it was, on the collaborative teamwork project. How did you bring along, the team with you?
And counting, as we say. We still have to. I think it was important to have as Simon said, that commonality of vision that you can rally people behind, regardless of what function in the business they are in. And for us, what made it really simple is, are we able to serve our customers in the best possible way? And if the answer to that question was no, then it's become really hard to resist that change. It was a challenging project. It was a transformational, and some people knew that when it becomes a reality, it may impact them as well. So it made it doubly hard, actually. But I think also for me is honesty as well. We didn't hide from not only our ambitions in this project, but also showed compassion and understanding that it may actually impact some of the colleagues that were in that. I think we had to embody, I think it's going to sound really cheesy on this, but we had to be human and really mean it, and we do at Sainsbury's.
Fantastic, thank you. I think we've got a question just here.
Thank you. So motivational and very inspirational speeches by all of you. My question is particularly for Desi. Adil's story is very much impressive and motivating. I sometimes see myself like that, but there is a lot of resistance among the stakeholders, might be particularly internal, when you want to bring the changes. As the lady was saying, we have done always this way, particularly when it comes to cost savings. Oh, we are buying something rubbish, kind of thing. That resistance. How do you think we can overcome that mentalities, and how to, again, we try to do as much of collaborative work and try to engross into their brains. Now, this is what it is, putting the facts in front of them, but still, sometimes you feel like you're not winning.
Any secrets for overcoming those resistance? You know, that data can obviously be important, but is it also about telling a story with that data?
It is, of course. Obviously, would like facts to speak for themselves. Without joking about this, cakes also help sometimes. It didn't quite when we were doing it because it was in the middle of pandemic, so we had to do all that digitally as well. I'd say, for me personally, it's been what's in it for me. If we were able to answer this question for every stakeholder that we've faced into and had to bring along on the journey for us, having a genuine answer to that question genuinely helps. But I'll be honest with you, are there still people in the business that believe perhaps that wasn't the best or optimal way to do? There probably are. It's inevitable. But I think being able to look back and, as you said, look at the facts and see they speak for them. They speak for themselves.
Fantastic. I think, is there a question down there? Yep.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask a bit about the submission itself, and this might vary from one team to the other. Did you assign kind of one person within the team to take overall responsibility for the submission? That's sort of part one of the question. And then number two, how long did it actually take to write the submission, out of interest? And I think you'll probably have varying responses, but just out of interest in terms of the actual submission itself. Thank you.
Great question. I had that on my list, so you've ticked a lot of box. Simon, if we start with you, I guess it's talking about a bit about the logistics of how you actually went about, and as you say, put together that submission. How did you choose who was going to put together that submission? How did you decide as a team? And then also, as the lady said, how long did it take, and how did you?
Yeah, very similar to my dissertation at university. I did it the night before. No, joking aside, I learned that lesson a long time ago. So I think the easiest, just a tip, the easiest thing to do is put a shared Word document online, right? And then ask everyone to dive into it, because no one person can represent the whole department. I mean, you just forget all the things that you do within a year, so you need lots and lots of input from the whole team. Of course, you do have to take a little bit of responsibility, and I did some of the editing towards the end, just to make sure the word count, because it has every section has a word count, which is it creates a high level of stress when you're trying to delete things out and use a thesaurus. But I definitely a shared approach. Throw everyone into it, at least at the beginning, and then towards the end, remove people and get to a more refined state.
Yeah, as an editor, I know that feeling of what hitting word counts, so it can be stressful. Emma, can you talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, slightly different approach. We're doing it now actually with this year's. So we've looked at the categories. We've had a bit of a team brainstorm as to which projects or initiatives or things that we're working on would fit those categories. And then we will appoint a lead for each of the categories we decide to enter for. We did that 3 years in a row, we've done it. And every year we've been shortlisted for something. So I'm assuming, and then last year, of course, we won. So our approach is working. I always say to the team, though, being public sector, budgets are obviously tight. We will only be allowed to go to the awards if we're shortlisted as a minimum. So it's in the team's best interest to get a well-written, concise and meeting that word count submission so that we can be shortlisted. And then, towards the end is a bit of a mad panic, because we always try and get it under the early bird as well, because it is a significant discount if you're doing more than one. Well, it's a significant discount anyway, but if you're looking to do more than one, it's definitely worth submitting before the early bird deadline. But it's a team effort initially to just agree on the topics, but then it often falls to one person to write the bare bones and then a few editors along the way.
Fantastic, and we'll sort you through all the entry deadlines, etc., in a little bit later. Sam and Desi, can you speak to that point? And that's when we'll break, I think, after this.
I think very similar. We kept it to a very small team, so we would have either 1 or 2 leads, depending on the entry. And obviously, we've taken a mostly similar approach for the years that we've entered before and perhaps not been so successful. but you need people with clarity of thought to bring it all together. If you have too many cooks, that you tend to lose the narrative. But absolutely, you need to cast the net quite wide to get the variety of input. And as you say, Simon, getting people to then input into a shared version online, but ultimately you need someone who holds the pen, and that person has to have editorial rights. Once they've done all the engagement, too many cooks will give you the wrong outcome, we found.
Can I just, one thing I will say, none of us have touched on, the endorsements that you are expected to, they're the bit that take the time. Pinning down your CFO or your chief exec to write some words. They don't underestimate the time that takes, I will say, right at the end, because we do all the hard work by writing the submission, counting up the words, but the endorsements and the kind of, from your senior team, or indeed suppliers, if you're going external for supplier endorsement, they actually can take quite a lot of time.
Great point, and I imagine it's something you can sort of do simultaneously, right? Yeah. It's but yeah, really, really good point. Well, can I say a massive thank you to all our speakers? They were really, really interesting. So thank you, everyone.
It's our job in the next little bit to talk about what it takes to turn that award-winning project into an award-winning entry. Now, as my colleague James said earlier, I'm Jackie Scully, Executive Director at content marketing agency Think, and I'm in the 3rd decade of my career, and I'm still writing awards entries. And there's a reason, because writing an award entry is an art, and we're going to talk you through a few tips that will hopefully help you on your way. And the good news is you don't have to be a writer to tell a great story when it comes to award entries. I'm joined today by Emma Scott, who I know will know many of you, and you will know her. She's the Global Head of Content at CIPS. Emma knows more about the awards process than anyone, so is the lady to talk to afterwards. But hopefully her tips will get you through into that shortlisting process. So I'm going to hand over to Emma to talk you through some tips from CIPS.
Thanks, Jackie. Tips from CIPS. Yes, I have, for my sins, been involved with the awards process, the judging process, for around 15 years. So to give you a little bit of assurances on the judging process at CIPS, so it's completely independent. There's no one from CIPS who sits on as a judge. I facilitate the judging call and the judging process, brief the judges, help them help the bun fight on who's going to get to win on our judging calls. But absolutely no one at CIPS wins. None of our judges know who are clients, so that has no bearing. And it's really very much an inclusive awards process as well. So although, yes, we get to see who the organisations are, the judges, I would say, are equally as intrigued by the smaller organisations and those small, perfectly formed projects, as well as the big, large-scale ones. So don't sit here and think, oh, crikes, I can never do what Sainsbury's did there. So I think we had 3 very different winners on stage today, and we have got a whole heap of history around that too. So that's something I would definitely take away from the process. So I have made some notes that I'll refer to try and get the tips over to you. So it's not easy, is it, to take time out of the busy diary to do this, and it also feels a little bit uncomfortable talking about ourselves so positively and bragging about ourselves, which in effect is what we're asked to do. But I would really take as much time as possible, and I know Emma mentioned that as well. Start as early as you can. Don't underestimate how long it actually takes. So first of all, I would really match the project to the award. So there's really clear, there's tons of categories. There's something that really should fit every single project that you've got on the go. So really take time to understand those that criteria, have a look through the question sets for each one to really determine, is this the right project for that category? And if your project is fairly big, and there's 2 things I kind of always say to people, is it too big and is it too soon? And if it's quite a big project, really think about the most significant or successful strand of that project. You can give an overview of the whole project, but really focus and hone down in that most interesting, innovative, greatest results aspect of it. So that would be my advice, and particularly where you've got a large scale project to get across, because as Simon said, there is a word count per question. That's all in the how to enter document as well, so you'll try and understand a little bit more about that once you've downloaded that document. So why now? Like I've said, is it too soon? What we're really looking for is mature projects that have a large percentage of the results that have already been delivered. The weighting of our judging, there's slightly more weighting on actually the benefits and what's been delivered. So it's fine to have a project where you've still got years 2 and 3 to deliver, but year 1 better have been your chunk of deliverables. So we're looking for a substantial amount of deliverables on those projects. So really think about, have I got enough tangible results to think about, to convey before you enter it. And they don't always have to be financial benefits as well. You can do broad range of results as well. So really think broadly when you're putting your results and impact statements down about what impact that project has had. Convene a diverse project team. I mean, some of the guys already mentioned that. They've kind of made my job very easy for me in mentioning some of these things. But we've had people who've, they said, I've made my wife read my submission. That was for an individual category once. Just have I really got the most exciting bits about this project across? You know, we get so in the weeds and in the detail of the project ourselves. So think about a different project team that you could pull together to bounce those ideas around, and I'd really make sure that's cross-functional. Maybe even include some suppliers or some customers, depending on what your project is. I think that was it on that one. Use your internal experts as well. So the word count is quite tough. So if you've got somebody who's a good editor, or use your marketing and comms teams to help you get that word count down so that you're really getting the most detail across in the fewest words. So I'd definitely recommend that one too. Bring in team members who are involved in the project, and as Simon said, you know, you may have loads of people to begin with and then you tune that down to just a few people at the end. But it's about celebrating success, so make sure that you've got all those people who are involved in that project, involved in the actual writing of the submission as well. It's a really great opportunity to just take stock and celebrate the work that you've done. So I'd definitely recommend that. Also, highlighting procurement's wider impact. I think this is quite important. And this is what your team delivered, but then how did it impact your corporate strategy? How did it make a difference to communities that you operate in? What effect did it make to the environment? All those kind of things, make sure you include that. But when you are talking about projects that are maybe corporate-led, make sure that you convey procurement's actual role in that as well. So it's fine to have a corporate-led project, not just a procurement-led project, but we're looking for the detail in what it is that you did on that. And I think that's a tip for different categories as well, because there's a category around cross-functional teamwork, and it's all too difficult to fall into the trap of just talking about the project and how brilliant it was, and you haven't got into the detail and the nuances around what that teamwork was like in order to achieve that end goal. What were the interventions that you put in place to make sure that you had better team working relationships? So remember, always go back to answering the exam question on that. Don't make assumptions on knowledge. So make sure that you're addressing what's being asked in each question. So comes back to answering the exam question. You're back at school now, so having that drummed into you. So keep going back to the question, have I actually answered what was asked of me there? And make sure that you've got your data and supporting documents. So as well as completing the online form with all the questions that we give you, there's an opportunity to upload 3 sides of A4. Now, my advice is not to rely heavily on that information. Your main submission is still what you submit, but these are supporting documents to back up your claims. So you can go to town on that, and that's when you can get your marketing team involved as well to make things pretty if you want. So make sure there's graphs in there, there's press clippings, all sorts of things, testimonials from a wide range of customers, suppliers, other stakeholders to help collaborate your story and any evidence that you can do to back up what you're saying. And I think that might be it from me.
Great, and I would back up the make it pretty as well. We once got feedback that our award entry was the prettiest they'd ever seen, which, you know, you got to win something sometimes as well. Right, I'm going to talk a little bit more then about the storytelling aspect of it. So have a clear story in mind when you start the process. Now, the way I like to think of it is you're limited on word count, you're limited on the amount of information you can convey. So my starting point is always, what's the headline? If you think of your award entry as a series of big headlines, record-breaking this, first to do this, imperatives, superlatives, anything you can think of, but get those headlines right. Because if you start from a point of view of the headline, the rest is easier to write. Now also think in terms of bullet points. Nobody has time to read lots and lots of screeds of entry. Your word count will help you on this. But if you reduce it down into a series of bullet points, you make sure you maximize the amount of words that you have available to you. But so what is that headline? Make sure you start from a point of view from that. Next is tell us a story. I think everybody who's spoken today has said this. But we're not here for a business plan. We do not want something that feels sort of robotic or lacking in humanity. Basically, we want you to be interesting, be surprising. Some of the judges will be reading through multiple entries, and therefore, if you want to make yours stand out, your story has got to say something that's new, that's unique, that's exciting and human. We all want to feel that your entry is relatable. We want to feel like we're part of your team when we're reading the stories. So definitely think about that storytelling element. Where were you at the beginning? Where did you end up? And what are the results that prove how you've delivered the project along the way? So always come back to that. Am I telling a story? Is this interesting? And always put it through. My content development director, Matthew's favorite thing is no one has time to read what you have to say. So if you reread it and you think, God, am I actually that boring? You know, really do just reflect on it and do get, I think getting someone in your family to read it is probably good because you'll get the honest feedback.
Get your kids to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. The next point is outcomes, not outputs. The amount of awards entries, I've judged lots as well as writing lots myself. And a lot of people do this list of we've done all of this stuff. And then they forget the bit about why. Why did it matter? Why did I do it in the first place? Could I save myself a lot of energy if I'd done half the stuff? So focus less on the output and more on the outcome. What is it that you can say that you've done that's better than anyone else? And back to Emma's point, why now? Why this year? Why should you be up there on stage picking up a gong? Don't focus on volume, focus on effectiveness. The next one is make it real. Now, I think a lot of the people that spoke earlier today were talking about this importance of going on a journey. Where their starting point was actually a place of, in some cases, difficulty, adversity, acquisition. There was a story there and they've come through it and got out the other side. Don't be afraid to talk about the things that didn't go well as the stuff that did, because that makes it human, that makes it interesting. And if you see that you've gone on a bigger growth curve than everyone else and you've learned a lot more, then your story's way more interesting than everyone else who went from good to great. Everyone likes an underdog. Everyone likes a story of adversity. So tell us your story and make it really real. And don't shy away from the challenges. Don't shy away from the things that didn't go according to plan. We win awards because we've done something different and we've learnt along the way. So don't be afraid to talk about where you failed fast and it didn't quite go according to plan, because that makes it real. Avoid jargon and acronyms. You may talk in your own little language, in your own little procurement team, but truthfully, you're talking when it comes to the judges, they're busy. They've got lots going on. They've got lots of entries to read. Make sure that what you're saying is really clear and almost go through it. Edit out the jargon. Make it about the story, the results, and the journey. And make sure that, keep those acronyms to a minimum. Think of it as a pitch. I think you talked earlier, you said it's a bit awkward when we start bragging about ourselves, but you've got to get comfortable with celebrating your achievement. Believe you're an award winner and we'll start to believe you're an award winner too. If you do not believe it, it will come across in the words that you use, in the underconfidence that you display, in the, we could have, or we might have, or we did. Be confident. Use language that shows that you are the best and you deserve to win an award right now. And don't be intimidated. If you've just sat here all afternoon thinking, oh God, I'm not big enough to win the award, I'm not interesting enough to be an award, I haven't come on a big enough growth curve. Your story is original to you, and it's your story that the judges really want to hear. So make sure that you put as much of you into it as possible. And don't worry if you're not the biggest procurement team in the world. It's about the journey that you've gone on and how interesting you are as an organisation. And often some of the smallest procurement teams win because they've got the best story to tell. And then the last one, now this is something that's a bit of work in progress for lots of people, but truthfully, winning awards doesn't start at the point at which you decide to enter a category and sit there brainstorming which ones you're going to enter. It should really start at the point at which you start a project. Work out, write down next time you do this, obviously not for these awards because you're going to be entering them in a few weeks' time, but truthfully, write down at the beginning of a project, what's the headline you want to be putting in an award entry, whether it's a year down the line, 6 months down the line, whatever. Put that headline down. Sit around a table with people and really think about what that means, because it's that feeling, it's that win that you want to be communicating. And if you go on a journey thinking about being a winner from the start, you're more likely to fake it till you make it. And then you might find yourself up on that stage. So they're my biggest tips, I would say. Now, obviously, the people we really want to hear from are the people who do the judging. So what I'd like to do now is invite one of our judges to the stage. As Emma says, she's more of a moderator and keeps the bun fight at bay. But we are going to hear from Ben Frick, who is Procurement and Supply Chain Director at Whitbread and was a fantastic part of our judging panel last year. So Ben.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
so while you're fixing
right,
your lapel,
sorted.
do you want to give us a bit of an intro to you, Ben?
Yeah.
So everyone knows a little bit more.
Hello everyone, I'm Ben. I head up procurement and supply chain for Whitbread, which is a business that most people think I've heard of them, but I can't remember what you do. So we are the second oldest business in the FTSE. We are nearly 300 years old. Barclays are annoyingly a little bit older than us. We used to be a brewery, but don't have anything to do with brewing anymore. We now mainly operate Premier Inn, which most of you will no doubt know as a sort of category killer, budget hotel operator, and we also have a number of restaurant chains, Beefeater, Brewers Fayre, and so on. But over the years, we've bought and sold most leisure and hospitality businesses you might have heard of. And I joined the business 2 and a bit years ago.
Okay, and Emma alluded to your awards. So what award did you win?
Yeah, so we won an award. As I came in, we won a CIPS Award, which is fantastic. I didn't claim the credit because I hadn't done any of the work. But I helped put the entry together for that. And I remember thinking this is a fantastic story we've got to tell here that was relevant to our business. So when you run a hotel business, the most important physical product that we buy is a bed. And we used to be, as a business, really, really strong on guest feedback on the comfort of our beds. And we'd probably taken our eye a little bit off the ball on that. And other people had got a bit better. And we realised we had to raise our game. So the team did a really, really good job in thinking through how we might improve that and get a much more comfortable bed, really understand how we could drive innovation, drive sustainability, and lots of other stuff. And actually, when they told me that story, I thought, this is amazing. We should put in for an award. And because that was so pertinent to our business, I think that came across and the guys won one.
Great. So you've heard Emma's tips, you've heard my tips. What do you want to lob in as your tips for not only entering an award, but getting the best out of that project story?
So, I mean, I don't think I've got anything particularly new to add, but I would emphasise a few things that I think you're absolutely right on. I think going for the right award, I know it sounds really obvious, but having read through lots of submissions last year, there were some where I thought, this is really good. And you probably should win something, but
Not in this category.
not in this category. or maybe next year you could have done. And it made me sort of think, you know, Erling Haaland's agent might be able to persuade someone that is brilliant at getting to 100 goals in the Premier League quicker than anyone else, whatever. But he isn't going to win Goalkeeper of the Year, so you've got to go for the right award. And definitely some, you thought, you're determined to tell this story, but you haven't really thought through, is it relevant this year in that category? So that, I think, is really, really important. And then I think the storytelling is absolutely critical to it, because I suppose if you think about how the judging works, none of us are sitting around there as sort of retired people with lots of time on our hands thinking, or in the judging week, I haven't got anything on the calendar that week. People will have lots of stuff to do, and you're trying to snatch time here and there. I'll come back to how the judges in a minute will take it very seriously, but nonetheless, you're trying to find a way to explain why you should win to someone that's going to mark out an hour here, an hour a couple of days later, maybe do some of these at 10 p.m. when they're back from parents' evening and mark them. And they'll take the time to do it really, really well, but you're still trying to make that story come alive, and there could be 50, 60, 70 nominees in a category, and how are you going to come across differently? So I think really thinking, can I make this compelling? And I think being able to do that really quickly is important, because whilst you do have to write 500 words for this part and 100 words for that, if you can't explain why you should win to me in the lift in 3 sentences, then you're probably not going to have a really compelling story to tell. So I think being able to tell a story and do so briefly is really important.
I think that's an interesting point as well. I think sometimes, and I know we've talked about people don't have the backstory, but sometimes spending too much time on the backstory means you then don't really tell the story, and you find out everything you need to know about the organisation, but not what makes them an award winner. So that's a really important point. Anything else from being the art of being a judge? You've talked about time management, the fact that you're getting through, you could be getting through 50 odd entries and in the cracks of the day. Is there anything else about the clarity of the entry? Anything?
So I think your point was really well made around jargon. These entries might be read by some of your colleagues in your business, and they probably should be. You should share your stories in the organisation to show why procurement is really important within your team and in your organisation. But the judges won't work in your organisation by definition, and if there happens to be any conflict of interest, you're not allowed to be in that judge in any of those categories. So I think when you're putting it together, don't write it in a way that would make sense to people that work in your organisation, using words that the CEO would use in their 5-point plan, because it will just be discombobulating and confusing for the judges. Write it in a way that my mum would understand, and if it passes the my mum test, you've got a much better chance of that working, I think.
Great. So I'm going to bring both of you into the conversation now. I'm keen to know, what would you like to see in this year's entries? What are the things that are going on in procurement and supply right now that you think, I want to see what's going on in this space?
For
Emma?
me, I guess I would like to see more the nuances around your project, why your project stands out or was more difficult than perhaps a Whitbread project. So in the past, I think we've had, and this comes back to doesn't matter whether you're small or big or whatever, if you're saying to me that in your sector, this is something that's been a particular pinch point, and it could be massive inflation or cost fluctuations on a particular commodity that you're seeing. Tell me about that, because I might not know about it. Working in Whitbread, I might not know how volatile steel is, for instance. Tell me that. Or if you're working in a private equity company, how difficult was it to sell in all of this stuff to that CEO over and above an organisation that's perhaps had procurement in its function for 20, 30 years. So really try to think of the nuance in your organisation or your sector and get that across, because our judges have a wealth of experience and massive amounts of scope and background from different sectors, but they may not understand the particular nuances that you're experiencing right now.
Yeah, I think I have a personal bias towards when people are really reflective and think about really simple but clever solutions to things by reframing the question. So I remember somebody in a submission last year talking around that they were helping convenience stores solve the problem of how do you make sure that beer in a convenience store is cold at the point you want to go and buy it and take it to a party or the pub or the park or what have you. And they thought through that there's only so much you can do to really drive, marginal gains, improvements on fridge technology, whatever it might be. But what they really thought through is the difference between milk and beer. So if I'm going to go and buy milk from a convenience store, I want to trust that that milk has been cold all the time and is not going to be rank and smelly because it's only been recently cooled when I pick it up. Beer, it doesn't matter whether it's been warm earlier, I just need to be cold at the minute I want to drink it. And so they'd figured out that they could probably save significant amounts of energy and therefore cost by super chilling it with a device in a convenience store at that time and leaving it ambient the rest of the time. And I just thought it was a really clever reframing of a real problem for them. And the way they told that story made it come alive. And all afternoon I was kind of buzzing from that, thinking that's really clever. It's not relevant to me and my job, but one day that thinking is going to help me solve a problem. So it kind of inspired me. And I love stuff like that because I think that's where it really comes alive. And where, as a judge, you then that's the other value you get out of it. You think, this has made me learn and think about new things.
So make it memorable.
It's those smart, really innovative things, isn't it? And I think we're expecting that over and above the... So to pick out another category, I guess, the people development category. Yes, we want you to put your people through CIPS, of course we do, but that's kind of the baseline standard. What are you doing over and above there? What are all those other little skills or interventions you're putting in to develop your team and keep them engaged? So I guess it's the over and above what would be expected from that category. I
think that's a really good point. It nudges me. There were a few entries I've read before where you think, the story you're trying to tell here is that you're doing best practice.
Yeah.
You think, good. That's probably, in most of the time, that is what we should be doing as procurement people, is best practice. But that's not going to win you an award. Just going, I'm now going to get myself to the same standard that everybody else got to in previous years is not going to win. It's the right thing to do, but don't emphasise that as your main story because it's not really different.
Yeah. So it's next practice we should be aiming for. I'm interested as well. I mean, one of the things I would suggest is also looking at who won. Obviously, you've got some award winners on the stage earlier, but who won and what did they win for? Because I think sometimes in their stories, you can pick out a few nuggets of things that perhaps you could latch onto, and it may also inspire you in ways that perhaps you hadn't thought you were an award winner, but could end up being. Okay, so Room 101, you're going to put we've talked about all the things you should do. What is it that when you're judging or facilitating the judging, what are the things you think, eye roll, when it comes to entries? What would you advise people not to do?
Jargon is the first thing I would pull. Because I remember there was one point I thought I was going delirious last time, and I thought, I've just read... It was quite late at night, but I was determined to do a really, proper job on it. But I was thinking, I've just read 3 in a row, and I can't remember what any of the they're all just acronyms and internal jargon. Couldn't tell you which was which.
Yeah.
I think that's quite frustrating, particularly when you go back and read them again. You go, this is actually a pretty good entry.
Yeah.
But if they just got someone to write this that could tell a story more compellingly.
Well, we have a good TLA, don't we? 3-letter acronym in procurement.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think anything that's going to stop your flow of judging to go and Google something or look something up, you've potentially lost us.
Yeah.
I think the judges, and I agree with you, Ben, that you really want to do the best job, and you're going to give it a go. You're not going to give up the first time, but I think if by the time you've read it 4th time, or yet another acronym to look up, or that you've not come across, then you've potentially lost us.
So you've been in the scrap, so you've seen it when everyone's done the reading, they've graded the scores, and they're in the room or the virtual room together deciding who deserves to stand on stage. What is it that turns somebody that's, in second place into a winner? What gives them the edge?
I think it's the innovation. It's doing something different and bringing that out, obviously, in the storytelling. So it's not that cookie cutter type approach of doing a really, like you say, best practice approach to whatever it might be, whatever category it is. Like, what was that real smart thinking? And it can be a really small thing, but it's just like, wow, that's really smart. Yeah.
And so Ben talked about an award entry that stood out for him. Anything from the past that you think, I just remember that entry, it really shone, and why?
There was one around and this comes back to my point around understanding the nuances, and it was a small team, a newly formed procurement team in a law firm, and they talked at length about working with stakeholders who basically owned that business, equity partners in a law firm, and how difficult it was to do a change program and change hearts and minds when this is, you're spending people's money out of their own pockets. So getting that across, I think, is really key. And also, I think, like when you said, Jackie, about making it the DNA and getting into the habit of entering awards, enter it purposefully. And I think this is what Sainsbury's do really, really well. So they don't always enter every year, and I think they're really considered on their entry. And they only enter when they've got something that they think, yeah, I think we could win this. So that would be my tip as well.
Great. Okay, so you've got a room of people who hopefully are about to enter the awards in the coming weeks. What are the, if you could nail it in one sentence, what are the things you want them to prioritise in the awards entry process?
What would it be? I think it's the next practice, not the best practice for me. It really is. That's so important. Like, what makes yours different from everybody else's? Yeah.
And I think I would agree with that. But I think that the one other one that I think is worth emphasising is human interest.
Yeah.
I think I've enjoyed reading submissions in the past where I think, I can sort of picture myself as part of this team. You know, Bob and Sue and Jim had this problem to fix, and that's how they did it. And then Bob had this idea and Sue said this. So I think the human interest bit really does make it come alive, and you're rooting for an entry where you think, I feel part of this. I can imagine being part of that team and wanting them to be successful. And I think that if you can make that come alive, that can help as well.
Yeah. And I would say that some years we just get an entry that absolutely blows everyone out of the water in a particular category, and it's just like clear, there's no discussion. We've been in that situation before, haven't we? It's like, these are just off the scale. And in those situations, I think, and to make the point earlier that Emma said, is to not be despondent about being shortlisted and not winning, and actually thinking about even re-entering your award another year on. With more results. I wouldn't shy away from potentially doing that as well, because some things one year can blow everyone out of the water, and it could absolutely smash it the following year. So that would be another tip from me.
Yeah, and I honestly think you should focus on all of those bullet points, just write them down. And I think the easiest entries I've ever had to write are the ones where there's just so much evidence, so much fact, that actually you don't need any padding. Right. You don't need any extra storytelling, because it's just there clear as day. And I think being able to consolidate that all, the more you have to waffle, the less you've got to really say. So really do that waffle test and make sure you're not using too many words where fewer can do. Right, let's open it up to the floor. Does anyone have some burning questions for the two people really in the know?
Yep. Hi. Oh, we on?
Hello?
Yeah,
okay.
We can hear you.
So you talked about re-entering a submission where potentially you were shortlisted in the past and unsuccessful. Is it going to be judged by the same judges in the same category every year?
Not necessarily. So we have around 30 judges, and we chunk them up into different teams. So judges will have 2 to 3 categories, depending on some of our categories are massive, so they'll have probably 2 categories, and some are, we get a smaller number of entries, so they might have 4. Judges are allowed to enter, but they don't have anything to do with any category that they've entered, so they declare any conflict of interest, whether that's an organisation they've previously worked for, a customer or a supplier, and then each category conversation, each group of judging conversations is completely separate.
Yeah.
So you won't know what we've discussed on.
So you can't sort of nudge and wink and go, well, if you mark us up on this one, then that just doesn't happen.
No, and that's, Sainsbury's won quite a few awards. The judges wouldn't have realised that they won another award in another category. And nobody, apart from me, knows who who the overall winner is. So, so I take that from everybody's.
And she doesn't take bribes. I think the other thing to add is if you are going to reuse an entry or rewrite an entry, definitely think about what Emma said earlier about why this year. So if it was work that was done, say, in 2023, and you're entering it for 2025, think about, like, what have we done since? How do you build on it? Because if the story's grown and the journey's grown, that's the story that will get you the award. So definitely don't just resubmit an entry. I would definitely reinterrogate it and update it and look at all the good stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good point.
Any other questions? Mr. Rock.
Emma, just to confirm, because I've had this conversation during the network break, these are global awards, so should be organisations from around the world can enter. And Ben, for you, are you expecting this year as a judge to, indeed, are you wishing to hear about what has been a very difficult external climate for a lot of organisations? Are you imagining that you are going to read about volatility, economic volatility, geopolitical risks and threats?
I am, but I'd say two things to that. So you're right, I would be expecting to hear that. But one of the things I love about being a judge is I genuinely don't know what I'm going to find out. And I suppose the sort of the payback for me is I get to read lots of stuff and think, wow, I've learned some new stuff here. So I definitely took away some learnings last year. Obviously, lots of entries are confidential, so I have to be a bit careful about what I would share that I took away from it. But I bet you I'll be surprised by reading through a huge stash of really impressive nominations. And I'll come away thinking, wow, I hadn't realised that. And this is what lots of other people are doing. And every day is a school day, and I'll certainly be getting something out of that. So, but yeah, I would expect to see lots of points around volatility and worries about tariffs and all kinds of stuff. Last year, overwhelmingly, was about AI. I feel like, half the nominations had really pushed the use of AI, and I suspect it will be a different conclusion this year. Probably what you say, but maybe not.
Oh yes, it absolutely is global. So we have awards in our regions as well, so they're regional awards, but the ones that we hold in the UK are our global awards. Yeah.
One thing I was going to add that I didn't mention earlier as well comes down to, Emma mentioned the supporting evidence part. Now, obviously, don't rely too heavily on it, but one of the things I've found to be really useful in terms of the structure of it is don't just do a data dump of things that people have to unpick and work their way through. If you've thought in terms of what are the headlines in your actual entry, use those headlines so that people can then go, right, okay, they've said that they were record-breaking this, record-breaking that, and then put the data and evidence and testimonials and endorsements to support that point. It is really important. Making it easy is as much about structuring it as working out what to say. So really do spend some time on that structure of your supporting evidence, because in there could be that one data point that makes something really sparkle.
And we talked about this earlier, didn't we, Ben, where make sure that you answer the question that's given. I think some people have maybe written their submission and then try to retrofit it into the questions that we give. Now, the judges aren't going to go, oh, actually, they said something in question 4 that I can give them points for in question 2. No one's got time for that.
It's a really good point. I remember thinking, as a buyer, you probably all had this. I often get suppliers coming to me and saying, I've got a solution for you. Let's have a look. Have you got a problem that fits my solution? You think, no, I've got a bunch of problems. You tell me you've got a solution that fixes my problem. And that's the same sort of thing, isn't it? I think it's about thinking, can I actually answer the question here, rather than I've got some stuff to tell you and you figure out later on whether or not I get any marks for it.
Yes. Yeah. Just building on that as well, I've judged a number of awards where people have been actually penalised, even though the story is good, because it's clear they have just cut and paste from a previous another entry into another award. So they haven't really thought about what makes this a CIPS Excellence Excellence Award entry. It's just a kind of cobbled together of something else. It's clear if you haven't answered the exam question and answered it in terms of this award. So do always, start from scratch when it comes to building an entry for a specific
I would definitely
award.
recommend that, because sometimes your project could be relevant to more than one category, and there's nothing to stop you entering it into more than one category, but don't use the same wording. Make sure it's tailored to the questions that are in that particular category. I would say that.
Great. And in a tip for cutting down the word count is try and read the sentence, short sentences. If your sentence is longer than a couple of lines, you've got it wrong, and just cut out those adjectives, descriptors, etc. Make it clear and concise, and but don't abbreviate too much. Sometimes I've read things that are so abbreviated, I'm like, I'm not entirely sure what you're trying to say to me here. So avoid too much brevity, but read it back and see what you can cut out. Any more questions?
So you've talked quite a lot about the sort of team awards, and I was just wondering if there's any difference in the individual awards on how you judge, or the things that you like to see within the individual awards?
Yeah, so the Young Talent Award is the only one in this awards that is up for entry. In our regional awards, we do have a Leader of the Year. We choose it slightly differently in the UK awards. We get a mixture of ones from Young Talent. So sometimes someone will enter for somebody, so it's written on behalf of that person, and then sometimes it's written by that person. I would say keep it really personal. Bring out your personality in it as well. And then we go through 2 rounds of judging with the individual awards, and you're invited, anyone who's shortlisted is invited to an interview with the interview panel. And I loved. Have you ever done those?
No, I haven't.
You should do them.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's my favourite part of the awards ceremony. And we have really supportive judges. It sounds horrendous, like joining a Teams call and there's me and 2 other judges staring down at you. But it's a really supportive environment. Everyone's really rearing for you to get the best out of that situation. They're great, and it gives you an opportunity to just get more of your story across and see more of your personality. And sometimes we do shortlist a longer list for the Young Talent Awards, because sometimes you read their submission and then you meet them and you think, why didn't you put this down? This is great. So that I think given the Young Talent entries, we tend to shortlist and think there's something here, we need to speak to this person. But I love that. That's my favourite category.
I've always found that if you get someone to write it for you, they can be more confident on your behalf, and they can also give you a bit of an external perspective of that person and how that person's made a difference. And I think there's a bit of heart that comes through in a way that sometimes if you're doing it for yourself, you're a bit like, and I did this, and I did that. And sometimes a little bit of underconfidence can come through. And there's some of the most heartwarming entries I've ever read are individual ones where people have said, this person doesn't even know how good they are. And it's that kind of language, it's that storytelling that makes you really want to root for them, you know? So I think do whatever you do and however you do it, bring that out. And if you do get someone else to write it for you, have a chat with that person as well, because often they'll have all the best intentions of presenting you in the best light, but there might be a nugget that you can give them that elevates that award entry just that little bit more. So do focus on that heart, because we all want to root for the underdog, you know.
You need to check out your newsletter, your CIPS newsletter as well, because we've been following Young Talent winners from over the years to see where they are now. I always connect with them on LinkedIn, because you can guarantee after 6 months they've either had a promotion in their internal job or they've been poached by somebody else. So great one to watch.
But that shouldn't stop you entering awards just because you're going to lose talent. I feel there's a thread today of people leaving after winning awards. But I think truthfully in life, you want to make people feel the best they can be about their jobs, whether they stay with you or move on. It's about celebrating people and success, and I think that's what awards, well, it's certainly what they've done for our business, and I hope they would do that for your businesses too.
Yeah.
Any last questions before we wrap up? This is your chance, last chance.
Already.
Okay. Well, look, we're pretty much done. But before we go, I thought it would be remiss of me not to mention a few little core deadlines. As you all know, the early bird entry is the 28th of March. Now, probably the best tip I'm going to give you today is that you can go on and pay for your entries and put information to follow. So you can get the early bird deadline rate if you go on there today and book your entry, and you can submit it later. Not late.
And that way you've also committed the spend, so you're going to have to come and...
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the best accountability that you could have. Obviously, the standard entry deadline is the 17th of April, and the late entry deadline is the 30th of April. So you can buy now, submit later, which is possibly, really good. And it saves you money, which all procurement teams want to know, right? The awards themselves are taking place on Thursday, the 4th of September. So get your glad rags ready. They are in the same place as last year in the Grosvenor Hotel in Park Lane. And I'm sure many of you have been there before, but last year we introduced CIPS with CIPS, which was a late night chip entry, which got a lot of people very greasy later into the evening. In terms of entering the award categories, the award entry prices are here. And there should be a QR code to enter, so you can leave today having paid and submitted as I say, later on in the process. The final thing to say is that, as James alluded to earlier, we also are not just running the Excellence Awards, we do run CIPS Futures, which is this year is going to be a one-day conference looking at everything you need to know about procurement and supply. It's an exciting day. I've got a packed agenda that we're stuffing already with great insights in covering everything from AI to sustainability. So please do make sure you book your ticket. So if I was to distill down the last 3 hours into a few little takeaways, let's go back and see what everyone told us. And when we heard from Simon, I think the best tip he gave us was keep trying, fourth time lucky. So don't be disheartened. Get that entry, and the practice of writing an entry will make sure that every year you shine it up and get it a little bit better. So keep entering, because you've got to be in it to win it. Emma then talked to us about being honest about the story that you're trying to tell, and also keep telling that story. I mean, she's going to steal from Simon and repackage it and retell it by the sound of it. So look at your story from different angles, and don't be afraid to kind of keep telling it, keep learning, and see what you can do to make it stand out. Now, Desi, when she spoke, she told us about the feeling of winning an award. So when you're sat there in the trenches writing an award, which isn't part of your day job, remember about that feeling of what it's like to stand on stage, or imagine what it might be for your team to stand on stage, because there's nothing more motivating than winning the gong and the alcohol that obviously flows afterwards. Sam then mentioned test the process. Use the entry process as a way of testing whether your project is good enough, and then also get someone else to critique it that doesn't know you or your business, just to give you a little bit of honest advice. And then from the people around me, we've got Ben talking about next practice, not best practice, and make it easy. Think about those judges reading your entries. They're going to give it time and attention, but make sure you make it easy for them to do so. And then Emma was telling us all about celebrating the awards process. I love to send emails at the point at which we've submitted our entries, to send another one when we've shortlisted, and then another one, hopefully, either when we won, or just to remind people that while we didn't win, and even if we got highly commended, you were part of something and we thought it was good enough to win an award, because that internal comms will take you a really long way. And that's for my one is, what's the headline? If you can't tell me what your story is in a front page news, then you haven't got your entry honed enough. So keep writing that headline and keep seeing where it will take you. So that's it. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks very much to Sainsbury's for hosting us in this beautiful auditorium. Thank you to Liberty Bloom for supplying us with a cupcake. I still hope there's some left. And to Atomis and Era Group, who are also sponsors of the awards. So thank you. Do stay around. I think we've got a little bit longer for a little bit of networking. But yeah, do enter, and good luck.
Look at that.